Since the arrival of European settlers in New Zealand, a pestilence has slowly corroded the crop our moral farmers have tried so hard to harvest. The protagonists in this pantomime are obvious, but often the sinful protect themselves by hiding behind a veneer of class and conformity. Whether they be criminals, clergy, confidence tricksters, or just complete there's one word which describes them all. It would be easy to write off these urban attention seekers as delinquents. But then it's always been easy to judge those whose only crime is trying to have a good time. In 1978, the country was shocked by a documentary about some other kids in search of a good time, as two 16-year-olds took the filmmakers into the world of all-night discotheques.
Auckland's most popular disco is Drasco's, near the city bus terminal. It takes its name from Max Drasco, painter and decorator, disco owner. It opens at 8 p.m. and although licensed until only 2 a.m, will stay open until about 7 o'clock, just to keep the kids off the streets. The inner sanctum of the disco cult. The sound is crushing. Normal conversation is impossible. It's dark, hot, smoky.
I don't really think much of the average New Zealander, because New Zealand to me it's not really a country, it's two countries. The rich separated from the poor, kind of. Because notice all the fellas who got bun jobs stay in Otara, and all the nice, rich, happy folks stay out in Reunier or Pickering or somewhere like that.
At the same time that Maori youth turned to disco as a sort of tiger balm for the soul, many Pākehā kids turned to punk rock.
One of their major dislikes certainly would be the disco scene. I mean, they find it utterly repulsive. It's such an empty, mush-minded kind of sound.
The well-dressed punk about town wears sneakers, perhaps black plastic pants, second-hand suit coat, second-hand shirt and tie, lots of badges, and short hair. Glazed look is optional. Razor blades, safety pins and chains are popular. Tattered jeans are okay, but the sneakers are a must. The instant punk bands aren't all males. The young women rehearsing in their dining room here are the idle idols, and like a lot of punk bands, most of the idols only started learning to play after they decided to form a band.
Like most of our pioneering punks, the idle idols often found themselves the centre of unwanted attention.
I was walking along with a group of people outside a hotel and this person that looked as if they were really interested in disco came rushing up and accused us of being punks, and we thought he must have been joking, and I said, "Oh, you're a disco freak, are you?" And he just just wasn't humorous about it at all. And then he went back to his car, and we all jumped into our car, and then we noticed that he was advancing with this great big huge iron bar.
We got beaten up at a party by Bury's, rugby players.
Girls kept trying to trip me up, kick me.
Really?
Yeah.
These kids, when they go out to have a good time, they really go all out to have a total bash. They just blow themselves apart. They buy their booze, they drink it all fast, and they'll get anything else down if they can, and they get totally out of it. And they go in there and they just go berserk.
Some saw the punks as moronic delinquents, while others appreciated their sage-like wisdom.
It's just anti-authority, Authority sort of breathes really hard down on us for being what we are, and it's just, we just throw back at them.
Do you agree with that, Melanie?
Yep. No, it's just conditioning of what you're meant to look like and things like that.
Do you worry about getting old?
Oh, I don't really want to get too old.
People say it's a phase because we look different and it's something that scares them.
What sort of reaction do you get from people in the street?
Oh, you're the ugliest thing I've seen.
The punks and disco kids may have been rebellious and energetic, but they were not often violent, unlike the occupants of this place. Indeed, for true hard-out delinquency, it's hard to go past a good old-fashioned prison riot. And the riot that took place here in 1965 was by far our most spectacular.
At 2 o'clock this morning, 2 inmates of the prison overpowered a warden. The inmates were masked. They stole keys and released practically all of the 293 people that are kept in this maximum security jail. And it's going to be quite some time, if at all, that the prison is going to be serviceable again. Cut.
But it would be a prison far from New Zealand that would hold our most famous delinquent. A prison called Colditz.
Yes, I was there a bit under a year, about 10 months, and towards the end of the war.
Charles Upham, VC and Bar, may be a hero to us, but in Germany, he was considered so dangerous a troublemaker that he was taken to the infamous Colditz Castle.
Although in modern times it would seem a pretty bad place to be, things were all right there because you had so many friends, and it's only when you're on your own that things can be really bad.
Congratulations on your decoration, and well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There was a weekly meat issue, in theory, which sometimes you got and sometimes you didn't, but we had ours commuted into once a month to try to get enough to sort of have a bit. And it used to come always in the form of horses or mules, parts of horses or mules that had been killed in air raids, and we used to get chunks of metal and things out of them. And I remember towards the end our mess share was just a hoof and with a shoe on it. And we boiled this hoof and got a lot of soup out of boiling the hoof, and we sold the shoe to a Canadian fellow. He had a file and he made knives and all sorts of things out of the shoe. Of course, the shoe weighed more than the issue of meat, so we lost on it, really.
Upham even tried to escape from Colditz, but was caught and sent back for even more servings of donkey hoofs.
Stay where you are, Mr. Upham, or I shoot.
When Colditz was liberated by American forces, most of the inmates made their way home. Upham, however, broke into the armory, helped himself to weapons, and went out hunting Germans. Within a few short months, this farmland outside of Christchurch will be turned into a brand new town of some 7,000 souls. But what's even more remarkable is that the creators of Pegasus intend this to be New Zealand's first ever delinquent-free community. The men behind this new Eden hope it will be a new sort of town, one without crime, graffiti, and unsightly washing lines. But if the much maligned policies of Pol Pot have taught us anything, it's that utopia is all too often elusive. For those not fortunate enough to live in designer communities, more drastic measures have been undertaken to deal with delinquency.
West Point or Sandhurst it may not be, but remember this is a bunch of kids all but written off by family and society.
However, boot camp solutions like this one run by Dan Davis oft provided cures that were as harsh as the disease itself.
Oh, well, once I cooked too much spaghetti and they started, because Dan a couple of weeks before had said that they weren't allowed to kick me anymore because that can stop me from having kids. And then they started to hit my head up here and they'd hit it really hard and they
with
just
their
kept
fists?
on with their fists.
Then there was Joanna Fuimuono, a firm believer in firm beliefs who served up regular dishes of the back of her hand to wayward delinquents.
We're proud people, we're proud Samoans.
When Joanna says work, that's what they do. Paint over some of their own masterpieces of graffiti? No problem. Joanna's is a tough program of tasks and routines. Compulsory attendance at church each week.
2, 4, 6.
And some unexpected liberties.
$2 each, you bring my change back.
Money handed out each day
Hurry up, get.
for the kids to go and play spacies. But abuse any privilege, make a slip, then there's trouble.
Sadly, the exposure of Joanna's version of the naughty step would eventually see her in jail. And with the introduction of the anti-smacking law in 2007, many parents feared that they too would soon see themselves on the wrong side of the law. This may look like an ordinary ferry service, but it's actually a special charter running twice weekly just off the coast of Auckland. The Kaitanga's destination is a point just past the 12-mile exclusion zone that marks the edge of New Zealand's territorial waters.
As soon as we leave the exclusion zone, these people will no longer be subject to New Zealand law. And that's exactly why these mums and dads have paid a pretty penny to come on board this ship.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have now passed the 12-mile exclusion zone. You may commence smacking.
So the question is, what do you like about New Zealand?
Nowadays, immigrants are welcome to New Zealand with open arms, mainly because we need them to drive our cabs, but also because we like to fleece them for the privilege of studying our language. Once upon a time, any kind of foreigner was considered a delinquent simply by virtue of his ethnic background.
Nice broccoli, Lady Frobisher.
Yes, it's a Chinese recipe.
Chinese? How dare you serve up this slant-eyed slop?
Why shouldn't I?
Why? Why? See, Aubrey, it's exactly what I'm talking about. It's the yellow bloody peril.
He's right, you know. My sister died of yellow peril.
No, that was yellow fever, dear.
Exactly. We've got to stop the blighters before they bring down the country.
Well, I think you're all xenophobes.
It's not the Xenos I'm worried about. It's the bloody Chinese.
Well, it's not just the food. Have you seen a Chinaman try to drive a horse? Or park one? Worse than a woman. And as for a Chinawoman, well, you might as well just shoot the horse.
The problem with the Chinaman is he makes no attempt to integrate. He won't speak our language, he takes our jobs, and mark my words, if we're not careful, he'll take our women too.
But isn't that exactly what the Maori could say about us?
Unfortunately, conversations such as this are still taking place at dinner tables up and down the country.
More pork, Sir Graham? No, I don't eat owl.
most commonly frequented interface with feral delinquency is probably this.
Old as sex, graffiti has consistently remained 1% dissident expression and 99% vandalistic rubbish. As the original Vandals invaded Rome, they were limited by the technology available at the time, namely a sharp rock. But with the advent of this, the spray can, we unwittingly unleashed the dogs of war. Some uber-liberal aubergines have exhibited an almost welcoming attitude to this invasion, bordering on the preposterous.
The words are very well written. They're not offensive at all. In fact, they even add a bit of colour to the place. It's giving us a good laugh.
Well, as Mayor of Wellington, we have an official view about graffiti.
Civic leaders have even expressed envy of other cities' graffiti.
I don't think we would want to clean it off if it were clever or witty or funny, but the standard in Wellington is abysmally low. There is the esoteric Aucklanders seem to be able to pull off some good ones in Ponsonby, but here in Wellington it seems to be mainly beanie popper, whatever they call them, beepy poppers. I'm terribly sorry, I don't know the proper name for it, but to do with rock groups and record companies, and it's just a pain in the neck. It's not even clever.
But most are helpless victims of a horrid pest, plain fucked off with this unsightly ruination of their erstwhile well-kept world.
Well, I feel sick over it. We both do.
And nobody has a higher bees per bonnet ratio than the doily set. Simultaneously violated, confused, and all aflap.
I would rub their face on that rough bricks. That's exactly what I'd do, and they wouldn't forget it.
If it wasn't for us, they wouldn't be here. They'd be pulling rickshaws to the Japs.
These feral spray cats are infamously elusive.
Well, really up till now, tagging's been a very low priority thing for us, and in some respects it probably still is because of the other crimes.
So the rare occasion of capturing a live one is deliciously sweet indeed.
What benefit do you get out of it? What pleasure do you get out of it? You're not only ruining people's property, you're ruining your own life, really, you know, because you're only young. And when you get older, you're going to think about this and think to yourself, my word, I wish I'd never done it, you know, because you won't forget it. You won't forget it.
This rapscallion can be thankful he wasn't hanged at dawn.
Ah, I hate taggers. If I had my way, I'd hang them, and if I couldn't hang them, I'd put them in stocks and I'd pour paint over them.
During a brief stint as Mayor of Christ's College, even disco dissident Tim Shadbolt
Harry next.
came down hard on desk defacers.
I am a thief. Here at Christ's College, it is definitely discouraged. Culprits who are caught are made to sand the top of the desks by hand.
Yet almost everybody has defaced something somewhere. Richard Prebble succumbed to the temptation in broad daylight.
You really made it in politics when you appear in graffiti.
Yet more shocking still, for a brief time in the 1980s, graffiti turned into graffitis.
Hamilton had comely shithouses, but they were plagued by a pungent penman who, bored from bombing ceilings, terrorised the public and their conveniences with an uncanny ability to write legibly with his anus. Many never ventured there again.
How unpleasant is it down there, Ted?
It's not pleasant at all. It's shocking, really. It would be a disaster for any visitor to this city to be confronted with what exists down there.
You think many councillors would bother going into some of these public toilets?
I'm sure they wouldn't. You'd have to be damn desperate.
Known in legend as the uni bummer, the crap rapper, Jackson Pulik, the brown bomber, and the racially charged C.E. Maifisi, he was only cornered once on camera.
Well, I've been doing these sprays around town for the last year or so. I suppose I must have done about 50. And I've just decided that instead of all the big sort of spray can sprays around the place, that I'd do something that was small and be a surprise for people to see.
It's hard to know what Coupe would have made of today's delinquents, or whether he would have approved of tagging.
But one thing's for certain, there's a fine line between dalliance and downright disobedience. And unfortunately, nobody knows exactly where that line is. In this our Aotearoa, land of delinquents. Come on off, you! Come on off!
People's property, you're ruining your own life, really, you know, because you're only young, and when you get older you're going to think about this and think to yourself, my word, I wish I'd never done it, you know, because you won't forget it.